If you're reading this, you probably already think I'm the bad guy. Spoiler alert, I am, but only because she wrote the screenplay for my transformation. My name is Carson Hale, and I'm 34 years old. I coordinate IT projects for a mid-sized tech company in Boston, which means I spend my days translating between programmers who speak in code and executives who speak in buzzwords. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well enough to support what I thought was a happy marriage. The key word there is thought. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My wife Jenna is 32, blonde, and runs a boutique styling service for Boston's wannabe elite. She's got that Instagram-ready look that makes men turn their heads on the street, perfectly highlighted hair, designer clothes that cost more than my monthly car payment, and a smile that could sell ice to Eskimos. For 3 years, I believed that smile was genuine when she turned it on me. I should have known better when she started saying things like, "Our income is ours, but mine is mine," during our morning coffee routine. Or when she'd roll her eyes at my jokes in front of her friends, then laugh hysterically at the same humor when her wealthy clients delivered it. The first crack in my willful blindness came on a Tuesday morning in March. Jenna was getting ready for work, applying makeup that cost more than most people's grocery budget, when her phone buzzed with a text. She grabbed it quickly, but not before I caught a glimpse of the sender's name. Max. "Who's Max?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual while I sipped my coffee. "Just a client," she said, not looking up from her mascara application. "He's got more money than taste, so he pays me to fix both problems." The diamond emoji seems a little personal for a client relationship. Jenna's hand paused for just a fraction of a second. If I hadn't been watching carefully, I would have missed it. "He's just dramatic. Rich guys love their little symbols of status." That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before in our marriage. I checked our joint credit card statements online. What I found made my stomach drop like a stone through water. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to, expensive lingerie from boutiques that weren't her usual shopping spots, hotel bars in the middle of workdays, and most damning of all, charges that coincided perfectly with days when Jenna had claimed to be working late with difficult clients. I'm a methodical person by nature. It's what makes me good at my job. So instead of confronting her immediately, I started documenting everything. Screenshots of credit card statements, photos of receipts left carelessly in her purse, a small recording device hidden in our kitchen, where Jenna loved to gossip on the phone with her best friend Blair. That's how I learned the truth about what my wife really thought of me. "Carson's so predictable," I heard her tell Blair one evening while I was supposedly working late. "He thinks providing for me means I should be grateful, but honestly, Blair, I'm the prize here. I'm young, I'm beautiful, I have my own business. He should be thanking me for settling." The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 years of marriage, and this was how she saw our relationship, as her doing me a favor by existing in my life. "What about Max?" Blair asked, and I could hear the knowing smirk in her voice. "Max understands my worth," Jenna replied. "He doesn't expect me to be grateful for basic respect. Plus, he actually knows how to treat a woman. Last week, he bought me that Cartier bracelet just because I mentioned liking it." I looked down at my hands, still stained with ink from fixing our printer that morning. When was the last time Jenna had thanked me for anything? When was the last time she'd shown any appreciation for the fact that my steady income allowed her to build her boutique business without worrying about rent or groceries? The recording device captured 3 more conversations over the following week. Each one revealed another layer of Jenna's contempt for our marriage and her growing emotional affair with Max. She called me boring but useful in one conversation. In another, she laughed about how I still believed she was working late when she was actually having drinks with Max at expensive hotel bars. But the conversation that finally broke something fundamental inside me happened on a Friday night. Jenna was in the bathroom, talking to Blair while she got ready for what she'd told me was a girls' night out. "I'm meeting Max tonight," she said, and I could hear her applying lipstick. "He's taking me to that new steakhouse downtown, the one where dinner costs more than Carson spends on groceries in a month." "Aren't you worried Carson will find out?" Blair asked. Jenna's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Please, Carson's too wrapped up in his little computer projects to notice anything, and even if he did, what's he going to do? He needs me more than I need him. I'm the best thing that ever happened to his pathetic little life." That night, I sat alone in our apartment, staring at the wedding photo on our mantel. In it, Jenna and I looked genuinely happy. Her smile was radiant, and my arm was wrapped protectively around her waist. I remembered thinking, on our wedding day, that I was the luckiest man alive. Now I realized I'd been the biggest fool in Boston. But here's the thing about methodical people. We don't just get mad. We get even, and we do it with the same careful planning we bring to everything else. I spent the weekend researching divorce lawyers, financial separation procedures, and tenant rights in Massachusetts. I opened a new bank account at a different institution and quietly began transferring my direct deposit. I made copies of every important document in our apartment and stored them in a safety deposit box Jenna knew nothing about. Most importantly, I started planning my revenge. By Monday morning, I had a strategy. It was going to be surgical, methodical, and absolutely devastating. Jenna wanted to play games with my emotions and my financial security? Fine. But she was about to learn that underestimating the boring husband was the biggest mistake of her perfectly curated life. The first phase would begin that very evening, at the place where this whole charade started. An expensive steakhouse where my dear wife planned to humiliate me one more time. I smiled as I got dressed for work that morning. Jenna was still sleeping, probably exhausted from her late night with the girls. She had no idea that her boring, predictable husband was about to become the most interesting thing that had ever happened to her. And unlike her relationship with Max, this was going to cost her everything. The steakhouse Jenna chose for our romantic dinner, her suggestion naturally, was the kind of place where the waiters wore bow ties and the wine list required a small loan. She'd made the reservation under the guise of wanting to reconnect with me, but I knew the real reason. She wanted to see how much she could spend on my dime while texting Max under the table. I arrived first and requested a table near the center of the dining room. If Jenna wanted a performance, she was going to get one with a full audience. She walked in 20 minutes late, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. It was black, form-fitting, and probably cost more than most people's rent. The Cartier bracelet Max had bought her caught the restaurant's ambient lighting perfectly. "Sorry I'm late, honey," she said, sliding into her seat without a trace of actual apology in her voice. Traffic was murder. "No problem," I replied, signaling the waiter. "I took the liberty of ordering wine. I hope you don't mind that I picked something in our actual price range instead of the $200 bottles." Jenna's smile flickered for just a moment. "Of course not. You know I trust your judgment." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly that I almost admired her technique. Almost. Our waiter, a young man whose name tag read Jake, approached with practiced professionalism. "Good evening. Are you ready to order, or do you need a few more minutes?" "I'll have the lobster," Jenna said without even glancing at the prices. "And could you bring me the truffle appetizer to start? Oh, and I'd like to upgrade my side to the lobster mac and cheese." Jake nodded and turned to me. I ordered a modest steak and a simple salad. "That's it?" Jenna asked, raising an eyebrow. "Carson, we're celebrating. Live a little." "What exactly are we celebrating?" I asked. "Us," she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. Her fingers were cold despite the restaurant's warmth. "Our marriage, our future together." I looked down at her hand covering mine. 3 months ago, that touch would have made me feel loved and connected. Now it felt like a snake wrapping around my wrist. Speaking of our future, I said, I've been thinking about our finances. Jenna's hand went still. Our finances? Yeah. I've been looking at our spending patterns, and I think we need to make some changes. We're hemorrhaging money on things we don't really need. I don't know what you mean, she said, but her voice had taken on a defensive edge. Well, for instance, there are all these restaurant charges I don't remember, and hotel bar tabs in the middle of the day, plus some pretty expensive jewelry purchases that I definitely didn't make. Jenna pulled her hand back and reached for her wine glass. I work hard, Carson. Sometimes I need to entertain clients or treat myself to something nice. I thought you understood that. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. I understand that you think our marriage is a business arrangement where I provide the funding and you provide… What exactly? Her eyes flashed with anger. I provide plenty. I'm building a business. I'm networking. I'm making connections that benefit both of us. Really? Because from where I sit, it looks like you're building connections that benefit you and some guy named Max. The color drained from Jenna's face. For the first time since I'd known her, she was genuinely speechless. Jake arrived with our appetizers, and the silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Jenna mechanically ate her truffle dish, which cost $45 for what amounted to 3 bites of food. I don't know what you think you know, she finally said, but you're wrong. Am I? Because I have credit card statements that say otherwise. I have receipts, Jenna. I have documentation of every lie you've told me over the past 3 months. She set down her fork and leaned forward. You've been spying on me? I've been paying attention. There's a difference. This is ridiculous, she said, her voice rising slightly. Max is a client, a very important client who could refer me to his entire social circle. If I've been entertaining him, it's for business. Business, I repeated. Is that what you call it when he buys you jewelry? Jenna's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Around us, other diners were starting to notice our conversation. You're being paranoid, she finally managed. And you're embarrassing us in public. I'm embarrassing us? I laughed, and the sound was bitter even to my own ears. Jenna, you've been having an emotional affair with a married man, spending our money on your dates with him, and lying to my face about it for months. But I'm the one embarrassing us? Jake arrived with our main courses, and I could see the discomfort in his eyes as he set down our plates. The poor kid was probably wondering if he should call security. Thank you, Jake, I said calmly. Everything looks perfect. Jenna stared at her lobster as if she'd never seen seafood before. Carson, please, can we discuss this at home? Why? So you can lie to me more effectively in private? I cut into my steak with deliberate precision. No, I think this conversation is long overdue. And frankly, I think it's appropriate that we're having it in public, since you seem to prefer conducting your personal business in restaurants and hotel bars. You're being cruel, she whispered. I'm being honest. There's a difference, although I understand why you might not recognize it. Jenna pushed her food around her plate without eating. What do you want from me, Carson? I want you to admit what you've been doing. I want you to acknowledge that you've been using me as a financial safety net while you explore your options with other men, and I want you to understand that I'm done being your backup plan. You're overreacting, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Am I? Tell me, Jenna, what exactly do I get out of this marriage? What do you bring to the table besides your stunning ability to spend money that isn't yours? Her face flushed with anger. I bring plenty to this marriage. I'm young, I'm beautiful, I'm successful. I'm the prize here, Carson. You should be grateful that someone like me chose someone like you. The words hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. Around us, conversations at nearby tables had quieted. Our fellow diners were now openly watching our domestic drama unfold. I set down my knife and fork and looked at my wife. Really looked at her. Her perfectly styled hair, her designer dress, her expensive jewelry, her entitled expression. For 3 years, I'd been blinded by her beauty and convinced that I was lucky to have her. But now I saw her clearly for the first time. She was shallow, selfish, and cruel. She was a user who had never loved me, only what I could provide for her. And she was about to learn what happened when the ATM she'd married finally ran out of patience. "You're absolutely right, Jenna," I said, pulling out my wallet. "You are a prize. The question is, what kind of prize are you?" I placed exactly enough cash on the table to cover my meal, my drink, and a reasonable tip for Jake. "What are you doing?" Jenna asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I'm paying for my dinner," I said, standing up. "You're a successful businesswoman with your own income, remember? I'm sure you can handle your own expenses." "Carson, sit down. People are staring." "Let them stare," I said. "Maybe they'll learn something about what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness." I walked toward the exit, leaving Jenna sitting alone at the table with her expensive meal and her even more expensive sense of entitlement. Behind me, I heard her call my name, but I didn't turn around. As I reached the door, I heard Jake's voice carrying across the restaurant. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but your card has been declined. Do you have another form of payment?" I smiled as I stepped out into the Boston night. Phase 1 was complete. Now the real fun could begin. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a modest hotel downtown and spent the evening setting up the infrastructure for Phase 2 of my plan. By morning, I had opened new accounts at 3 different banks, changed my direct deposit information, and scheduled appointments with 2 divorce attorneys. I also did something that would have been unthinkable just a week earlier. I created a social media account. My coworker Dev had been telling me for years that I needed to join the digital age. "Carson, man, you're like a ghost online," he'd said just last month. "How are people supposed to know you exist?" Now I had a very specific reason for wanting people to know I existed. I spent Tuesday morning at my lawyer's office. Margaret Vance was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in what she called high-conflict divorces. Her office walls were lined with framed thank-you letters from clients, and her desk held a small plaque that read, "Justice is expensive, but so is injustice." "Mr. Hale," she said after I'd explained my situation, "I have to ask, are you certain you want to proceed with this course of action? Divorce is emotionally and financially draining, even under the best circumstances." "Ms. Vance," I replied, "my wife has been emotionally cheating on me, spending our joint funds on her affair, and lying to my face about it for months. She told me last night that I should be grateful she chose to marry me because she's the prize in our relationship. I'm not just certain, I'm determined." Ms. Vance smiled, and it was the smile of a shark. "In that case, let's discuss your options. Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state, but that doesn't mean we can't make your wife's behavior work in your favor." She explained how Jenna's financial infidelity could affect spousal support calculations, especially given that she had her own income from her styling business. More importantly, she outlined how I could legally protect my assets during the separation process. "The key," she said, "is documentation. You mentioned that you've been recording her conversations?" "Only in our shared living space," I said. I researched the wiretapping laws. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state for phone calls, but there's no expectation of privacy in your own home for in-person conversations. "Excellent. And you have financial records?" "Screenshots of every suspicious transaction, plus receipts I found in her purse and car." Ms. Vance nodded approvingly. "You're thorough. I like that. Now let's talk strategy." By the time I left her office, I had a clear roadmap for the legal destruction of my marriage, but the legal system would take months to work its way through the courts. I wanted Jenna to start feeling consequences immediately. That's where social media came in. I started small. A simple post on my new account. Sometimes you don't realize how much you've been carrying until you finally set it down. Feeling lighter already. New beginnings. Self-respect. Within an hour, I had responses from coworkers, college friends, and even some neighbors. People I hadn't spoken to in months were reaching out, asking if everything was okay, offering support. Dev called me directly. "Dude, what's going on? That post doesn't sound like you." "It's exactly like me," I said. "I'm just finally letting people see it." "Is this about Jenna? You guys seemed happy." "We seemed a lot of things, Dev. Most of them were illusions." That afternoon, I got a text from Jenna. "We need to talk. This is ridiculous." I didn't respond. An hour later, "Carson, I'm serious. Come home so we can work this out like adults." Still no response. By evening, she was calling. I let it go to voicemail. "Carson, this is childish. I don't know what you think you're proving, but you're embarrassing both of us. Call me back." I deleted the message without saving it. Wednesday morning brought a new development. Tessa, one of Jenna's co-workers at the boutique, sent me a friend request on social media. I accepted it, curious about what she wanted. The answer came in a private message. "Hey Carson, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I saw your post yesterday and, well, I think there are some things you should know about Jenna and Max." We arranged to meet for coffee that afternoon. Tessa was a petite brunette in her late 20s who'd always seemed nervous around me during the few times we'd met at work events. Now I understood why. "I've been wanting to tell someone about this for weeks," she said, stirring her latte nervously. "But I didn't know how, and I wasn't sure if you knew." "I know about the affair," I said. "What I don't know is how obvious it's been to other people." Tessa winced. "Pretty obvious. They don't exactly hide it when they're together. Last week, Max came into the boutique and bought her a $1,000 handbag just because she mentioned liking it. Then they went to lunch and didn't come back for 3 hours." "What else?" "She talks about you," Tessa said quietly. "Not nicely. She calls you her safety net and jokes about how you don't even notice when she's gone. She says you're too boring to ever leave her, so she can do whatever she wants." Each word was like a small knife between my ribs, but I kept my expression neutral. "Has she said anything about our finances?" "She brags about spending your money on things you'll never know about. Designer clothes she keeps at the boutique, expensive lunches, spa treatments. She says you're too trusting to check up on her." I thanked Tessa for her honesty and bought her coffee. As we parted ways, she said, "Carson, I know this probably doesn't help, but everyone at work thinks you deserve better. Jenna's not a good person." That evening, I crafted my second social media post. This one was more pointed. Learned an important lesson this week. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them, even if it takes you 3 years to see it clearly. Lessons learned. Moving forward. The responses were immediate and supportive, but more importantly, the post was shared, and shared again. Within hours, it had been seen by hundreds of people in our social circle. My phone started ringing. "Jenna." This time, I answered. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she said without preamble. "I'm being honest about my life," I replied calmly. "Is there a problem with that?" "You're making us look bad on social media. People are asking me questions." "What kind of questions?" "Questions about our marriage, about whether we're having problems. It's embarrassing." "I imagine it is," I said. "Almost as embarrassing as having your husband find out about your affair through credit card statements." "It's not an affair," she shouted. "Max is a client." "Jenna, clients don't buy their stylists Cartier jewelry. Clients don't take their stylists to romantic dinners at expensive restaurants. And clients definitely don't inspire their stylists to call their husbands boring safety nets, who should be grateful for the privilege of being used." Silence. "You recorded me," she said finally. "I documented the truth about my marriage. There's a difference." "You can't use those recordings in court. It's illegal." "Actually, it's not. I checked with my lawyer, but thanks for confirming that you're already thinking about court proceedings. It saves me the trouble of wondering whether this marriage is salvageable." "Your lawyer?" Her voice cracked slightly. My lawyer. My new bank accounts. My new living arrangements. Did you really think I was going to sit quietly while you destroyed our marriage for your own entertainment? Carson, please. We can work this out. No, Jenna. We can't. Because working it out would require you to acknowledge what you've done wrong, and we both know you're not capable of that level of self-reflection. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Jenna had spent the night trying to reach me, and her messages showed a progression from anger to panic to desperation. But the most interesting message wasn't from Jenna. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Hale, this is Elise Morrison. I believe you know my husband Max. I think we should talk. Phase 3 was about to begin, and I was going to have help. Elise Morrison was nothing like what I'd expected Max's wife to be. Where I'd imagined a trophy wife similar to Jenna, Elise was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who dressed conservatively and spoke with the precision of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. We met at a small cafe in Cambridge, far from both of our usual neighborhoods. She was already seated when I arrived, nursing a black coffee and reading what appeared to be a legal brief. Mr. Hale, she said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Please call me Carson, and thank you for reaching out. I have to admit I wasn't sure what to expect. Elise smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I imagine not. Most men in your situation wouldn't expect the other man's wife to become their ally. She gestured for me to sit, and I ordered coffee from the hovering waitress. How long have you known? I asked. About your wife specifically? 2 weeks? About Max's pattern of behavior? 3 years. I felt a chill run down my spine. Pattern? Oh yes, Elise said, her voice taking on a bitter edge. Jenna isn't Max's first affair. She's just the most recent in a long line of young, beautiful, financially motivated women who mistake my husband's wallet for his character. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. I've been documenting Max's infidelities for quite some time, Mr. Hale. My lawyer suggested it might be useful if I ever decided to divorce him. But you haven't? Not yet. Max is very wealthy, and despite what people think, Massachusetts divorce law doesn't automatically entitle me to half of everything, especially when much of his wealth is tied up in business partnerships and trusts. I've been waiting for the right moment to strike. She slid the folder across the table to me. I believe that moment has arrived. Inside the folder were photographs, credit card statements, hotel receipts, and what appeared to be transcripts of text message conversations. The evidence of Max's affair with Jenna was overwhelming and meticulously documented. This is incredible, I said, flipping through the pages. How did you get all this? I hired a private investigator 2 years ago, Elise said, matter-of-factly. When you have Max's resources, you can afford to be very thorough. The investigator has been tracking all of Max's activities, including his relationship with your wife. I looked up from the folder. Why are you sharing this with me? Because, Carson, I think we can help each other. You want to expose your wife's affair and protect yourself in the divorce. I want to destroy Max financially and socially. Together, we can accomplish both goals. Over the next hour, Elise outlined her plan. It was elegant, thorough, and absolutely ruthless. Max owned a luxury car dealership and several rental properties around Boston. His business success depended heavily on his reputation in the community and his relationships with wealthy clients. A public scandal involving multiple affairs could destroy both. The key, Elise explained, is timing and presentation. We need to expose the affair in a way that maximizes damage to both of them while minimizing blowback on us. What do you have in mind? Elise's smile was sharp as a blade. Max is hosting a charity gala next weekend. 500 of Boston's wealthiest and most influential people will be there, including many of his business partners and clients. It's the perfect venue for a public revelation. You want to expose the affair at his own charity event? I want to do more than that, she said. I want to destroy his reputation so completely that he'll be lucky to get a job selling used cars in New Hampshire. We spent another hour planning the details. Elise would handle the social and business aspects of Max's destruction, while I would focus on the more personal elements of Jenna's downfall. But first, I had some groundwork to lay. That afternoon, I drove to Max's car dealership. It was exactly what I'd expected. A gleaming showroom full of vehicles that cost more than most people's annual salaries, staffed by salespeople who looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Max himself was easy to spot. He was tall, silver-haired, and dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He was showing a red sports car to a young couple, his smile bright and his manner effortlessly charming. I watched him for 20 minutes, studying his mannerisms and his interactions with customers. He was smooth, confident, and completely comfortable in his role as the successful businessman. He had no idea that his world was about to collapse. I didn't approach him that day. Instead, I took photographs of his cars, his dealership, and his license plate. Then I drove to his house. Max lived in a mansion in Brookline, the kind of place that required a staff to maintain. The driveway was circular and lined with perfectly manicured hedges. His prized possession, a silver Porsche 911, sat in the driveway like a monument to his success. I parked across the street and waited. At 6:30 p.m., Jenna's car pulled into the driveway. I watched my wife get out of her sedan and walk to the front door like she owned the place. She was wearing another dress I'd never seen, and she moved with the confidence of a woman who believed she was untouchable. Max answered the door himself, and even from across the street, I could see the way he looked at her. It wasn't love or even genuine attraction. It was possession. Jenna was just another acquisition to him, like his cars or his house or his business. They disappeared inside, and I sat in my car for another hour taking pictures and making notes. By the time Jenna left, I had everything I needed for the next phase of my plan. The following morning, I called in sick to work and drove to a hardware store. I bought spray paint, super glue, and several other supplies that would have looked suspicious if purchased together anywhere else. That night, while Jenna was working late, actually having dinner with Max at another expensive restaurant, according to the private investigator Elise had shared with me, I returned to Max's house. His precious Porsche was sitting in the driveway, unlocked and unprotected. Rich people, I reflected, often made the mistake of believing their wealth made them invulnerable. I worked quickly and quietly, the word cheater across his windshield in bright red paint. Liar on the driver's side door, and on the hood, in letters large enough to be seen from the second floor of his house, "Ask me about my affairs." But the paint was just the beginning. I superglued his door handles, filled his exhaust pipe with expanding foam, and left a printed copy of his text message conversations with Jenna under his windshield wipers. Then I waited across the street with my camera. Max discovered my handiwork at 7 a.m. when he came out to get his morning newspaper. The sound he made, a strangled cry of rage and disbelief, was audible even from across the street. He tried the door handles first, then realized they were glued shut. He walked around the car, taking in the full scope of the damage, his face growing redder with each step. When he found the text messages, he looked around wildly, as if expecting to find me hiding in his bushes. I took pictures of everything: his ruined car, his panicked expression, his futile attempts to scrape the paint off with his fingernails. Then I drove home to wait for Phase 4. Jenna was in the kitchen when I arrived, making coffee and scrolling through her phone. She looked up when I entered, her expression carefully neutral. "Good morning," she said. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I replied, pouring myself coffee. "Too much on my mind." "Carson, we really need to talk about what's been happening between us." "Do we? I thought I was just the boring safety net who should be grateful for your attention." Jenna flinched. I never said that. Actually, you did. I have recordings, remember? She set down her phone and looked at me directly. Okay, fine. Maybe I said some things I shouldn't have. But Carson, I do love you. This thing with Max, it's not what you think. What is it then? It's business. He's helping me expand my client base. Yes, maybe the lines got blurred, but it was never about replacing you. I almost laughed. Even now, caught red-handed, she was still lying. Jenna, I said, Max's car got vandalized last night. Someone spray-painted cheater on his windshield and glued his door handles shut. The police are probably involved by now. The color drained from her face. How do you know that? Because I did it. She stared at me in shock. You… what? I vandalized his car. I destroyed his precious Porsche. And tomorrow, when he tries to have me arrested, I'm going to show the police the evidence of his affair with my wife. Jenna's hands were shaking. Carson, you can't do this. You'll go to jail. Maybe. But Max will be ruined and so will you. Is your affair worth that risk? She started crying then, real tears that smeared her perfect makeup. Please, Carson. I'll end it with Max. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't destroy my life over this. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and felt nothing but contempt. Jenna, I said quietly, you destroyed your own life the moment you decided I wasn't worth your loyalty. I'm just making sure everyone else knows about it. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Max's number. I answered with a smile. Hello, Max. I hear you're having car trouble. Max's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. You snake. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've given your car a new paint job, I replied calmly. Don't you like it? I thought red really brought out your eyes. This is vandalism. I'm calling the police. Please do. I'm sure they'll be very interested in the evidence I left under your windshield wipers. Tell me, how do you think your wife will react when she sees those text messages? Silence. That's what I thought, I continued. Now here's how this is going to work. You're going to end your relationship with my wife immediately. You're going to pay for the damage to your own car. And you're going to pray that I don't decide to share your text messages with your business partners. You can't blackmail me. I'm not blackmailing you, Max. I'm offering you a chance to handle this quietly before it becomes a public spectacle. But if you'd prefer the public route, I'm happy to oblige. I hung up and turned to Jenna, who was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. You're not the man I married, she whispered. You're right, I said. The man you married was naive enough to believe that love and loyalty mattered to you. This is who I become when I stop being naive. Over the next 3 days, my carefully laid plans began to unfold with mechanical precision. Max, faced with the choice between public humiliation and quiet retreat, chose retreat. He paid to have his car repaired and stopped contacting Jenna. But the damage to his marriage was already done. Elise had shown him the full extent of her evidence and filed for divorce. Jenna, meanwhile, was discovering what life looked like without her financial safety net. I had removed her access to our joint accounts and credit cards. Her styling business, which had never been as profitable as she'd claimed, couldn't support her expensive lifestyle. She tried everything: tears, anger, seduction, threats. None of it worked. Carson, please, she said on Friday evening. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll change. You don't want to change, Jenna. You just want to avoid consequences. That's not true. Prove it. Tell me exactly what you did wrong and why it was wrong. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. After 30 seconds of silence, she said, I got too close to a client. That's not what you did wrong. I spent money without discussing it with you? Still not it. Another long pause. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to admit that you never loved me. I want you to acknowledge that you used me as a financial provider while you shopped around for someone better. I want you to own the fact that you have no respect for me, our marriage, or the concept of loyalty in general. Jenna's face hardened. Fine. You want honesty? Here's honesty. You're boring, Carson. You're predictable and safe and boring. Max made me feel alive in ways you never could. There we go, I said. Now we're getting somewhere. So what happens now? Do you get to feel superior while you destroy both our lives? I don't destroy your life, Jenna. I'm just going to stop subsidizing it. That weekend was Max's charity gala. I didn't attend, but Elise kept me updated via text messages throughout the evening. 8:15 p.m. Max looks nervous. He keeps checking his phone. 8:45 p.m. I just introduced myself to 3 of his biggest clients as his soon-to-be ex-wife. You should see their faces. 9:30 p.m. The private investigator just delivered copies of the affair evidence to Max's business partners. He's been called into an emergency meeting. 10:15 p.m. Max just left his own charity event. Several clients followed him out, and not in a good way. 11 p.m. It's over. Max's business reputation is destroyed. His partners are already talking about buying him out. The following Monday, I filed for divorce. Jenna was served with papers at her boutique, in front of her co-workers and several clients. According to Tessa, who texted me immediately afterward, Jenna broke down crying and had to leave work early. But the real coup de grace came that evening. I had spent the weekend creating a comprehensive social media post, not angry or vindictive, but calm and factual. I laid out the timeline of Jenna's affair, included screenshots of relevant evidence, with personal details redacted, and explained why I was ending our marriage. The post concluded, I'm sharing this not for sympathy, but for clarity. When someone shows you that they view your relationship as a transaction rather than a partnership, believe them. I believed Jenna when she told me I should be grateful she chose me. Now I'm showing her what gratitude actually looks like. Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times. Friends, co-workers, and even casual acquaintances were commenting with support and sharing their own stories of similar betrayals. But more importantly, the post reached Jenna's social circle. Her carefully curated image as a successful, sophisticated businesswoman crumbled as people realized what she had actually been doing. Blair, her best friend and enabler, was among the first to distance herself. I had no idea it had gone this far, she commented publicly. I thought it was just harmless flirting. Other friends followed suit. Clients canceled appointments. Her boutique, which depended heavily on word-of-mouth referrals, began to struggle as her reputation spread through Boston's interconnected social networks. Jenna called me that night, sobbing. You've destroyed everything, she said. My business, my friendships, my reputation. Was your revenge worth destroying my entire life? Jenna, I said quietly, I didn't destroy your life. I revealed it. Everything that's happening to you now is the natural consequence of choices you made. If you don't like those consequences, you should have made different choices. I made one mistake. You made hundreds of mistakes over several months. You made the mistake of thinking I was too stupid to notice. You made the mistake of believing I was too weak to fight back. And you made the biggest mistake of all. You confused kindness with weakness. She hung up without saying goodbye. 3 weeks later, our divorce was finalized. Massachusetts law worked in my favor. Jenna's affair and financial deception meant she received no spousal support, and I kept most of our shared assets. Max's business collapsed within a month. His partners bought him out for a fraction of what his shares had been worth, and his divorce from Elise cost him most of his remaining wealth. The last I heard, he was working at a small car lot in New Hampshire, just as Elise had predicted. Jenna's boutique closed 6 months later. Her reputation in Boston's social circles never recovered, and without Max's financial support or my steady income, she couldn't maintain the lifestyle that had defined her identity. She moved back in with her parents in Ohio. I heard through mutual friends that she was working at a department store and dating a middle manager who thought her designer clothes were impressive. As for me, I got promoted at work, bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, and started dating a woman who pays for her own meals and genuinely laughs at my jokes. Sometimes people ask me if I feel bad about what happened to Jenna and Max. The answer is no. I feel bad that it took me 3 years to see who they really were, but I don't feel bad about the consequences they faced for their own actions. Jenna was right about one thing. She was a prize. She was a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake someone's love for their weakness and their kindness for their stupidity. And I was the man who taught her the difference. Dev still jokes that I should write a book about the whole experience. Dude, he said last week, you went from doormat to destroyer in like 6 months. That's character development. Maybe he's right, but I prefer to think of it as simply learning to value myself as much as I had valued others. Jenna wanted everything for herself. In the end, she got exactly what she deserved, nothing, and she got to have it all by herself. As I sit in my new house, writing this account, I can hear my current girlfriend, Sarah, laughing at something on TV in the next room. She's a teacher, she drives a Honda Civic, and she insists on splitting the check when we go out to dinner. Last week, she thanked me for fixing her garbage disposal. It's amazing how good genuine gratitude sounds when you've spent years living without it.